Hello everyone, welcome back to this channel where I solve LeetCode's problem of the day with you all. Before proceeding to the video, let me tell you about myself. I am a guardian at LeetCode and I've solved more than 1000 DSA problems across various platforms. So I've been through this grind and I know what it takes to be in this field. So I could definitely help you with the best explanations and strategies to tackle the questions. Right? So let's start solving the question without wasting any time. So it's lead code problem number 3085 and it's a medium level question, and the question title says that you have to find the minimum deletions to make string k special. Okay, let's read the question. You are given a string word and an integer k. Okay, so we consider word to be k special if frequency of word of I minus frequency of word of j is less than equal to e. That is, the frequency of that particular character, the difference between the frequency of that particular character and another character in the string should always be less than or equal to this integer k, right? So it is simply saying that difference between frequency of any two character in the string should always be in the range of this. Okay, that's what it is saying, and we have to just simply return the minimum number of characters which you need to delete to make this particular case or this condition valid or true. Is this what we have to do in this? So if you can see the example aabcaba, let's solve this first. Okay, so our word was given a aabcaba. Okay, so here, and our k given is 0. So here, as we can see, uh, that it has already been said that you have to find out the frequency of every character. So that's obvious that we will need to have a variable or an array which keeps the counter, or the, yeah, which counts, which has the frequency of all the characters. So if I count a in this particular word, there are 4 a's, and then you have your b as 2 and c as 1. So what has been said here, that you have to make minimum possible deletion of characters from the string such that the difference between any two characters in the string, right, is always less than or equal to k, right? So I could definitely think that if I take my A as my base character first, right, and then if I compare the frequency of A with B and with C, right, if I compare the frequency of this with this and then this, right, so I would want that it should always be in the range that the frequency of a minus frequency of B and frequency of A minus frequency of C should always be less than and equal to K. This is what is simply being asked here, right? So, and then the same procedure would be followed for other characters also, that if I'm having my b, okay, then its frequency shall be compared with my a and its c, right, and it should also fulfill the same scenario here, right, and the same thing would happen with my c also, right? So I need to traverse through each and every character, right? Take them, consider them as the base frequency, right? And then with that I need to compare the other frequencies, right, and see that whether they lie in the range or not. Okay, so definitely for this case, to have our frequency in range, right, and if we are taking our base frequency, so what I can think of, that if this is my base frequency and this is the maximum possible range of k, right, uh, what do you understand when this k is actually given? See, it means that the difference, here you can already see that the difference is this. It should be this. So if I try to rearrange this, what will happen in this? So it simply says that my frequency of A, right, should be less than, or you may think of, yeah, so in this particular case, if I try to manipulate these conditions a little and I just simply multiply with minus on both sides, what I will get, it would be minus of frequency of A plus of frequency of B less than equal to minus of K, right? So mm no, don't think of that case. See, as we have been given that your k, the difference between your base frequency and your comparison frequency should always be less than and equal to k. This has been given, right? So we could definitely think of that your comparing frequency should have the range between base frequency, right, it should be in greater than or equal to your base frequency, or it should be less than and equal to base frequency plus k, right? So this should be like the range of our comparison frequency. So in this way we can just simply find out it. So why? Because if your frequency will lie in this range, then definitely the difference between your comparison frequency and your base frequency would be less than k, right? If your base frequency is 4 and your base frequency, wait, if your base frequency is 4 and your base frequency is 4 and k is 1, right? So if it is 5 and this is 4, right, so now your comparison frequency should be in this range only. That means it can either be 4 or it can either be 5. This is what I'm trying to say, right? Because when you will have this, then the difference between them, that is 5 minus 4 or 4 minus 4, which is 1 and 0, this shall always, this would be in the range of k only, right? Since 1 is equal to k and 0 is less than k. I hope this is understood, that the difference is always lying in this. So your comparison frequencies range could be minimum most of base frequency and the maximum most of base frequency plus k. This is what you have to simply do. So after seeing this, I could think of two things here. One is, if my comparison frequency is less than my base frequency, so since it is not lying in that range, so my minimum deletion which I'm taking will, so this character shall be deleted completely, right? I'll consider all of its frequency. Next case, that if it is considerably greater than my base frequency, right, so I'll just want that if it is greater, then it's no problem, but it should not but if its difference is actually greater than k, right, that may be that comparison frequency is greater. So the difference between comparison frequency and base frequency is also greater than k. So minimum most deletion which I would require to bring my comparison frequency in the range that I specified above. So for that, what I'll need to do is simply delete the excess one, right, this excess one, and then this k. This is what would be required to be done here, right? So if in our previous example which we took a b c a b a, let's solve that, right, a b b c a b a. This was our example, right? So in this case, we have a as 4, b as 2, and c as 1, right? So what we'll do, we'll first consider base frequency as a, which is 4, and then we will compare, take b. Okay, we will compare and take b as 2. So b is 2 and this is now less than 4. So what we will do, that our minimum deletion will take all of the frequency of b, because if it's less, then obviously the difference between our base frequency and this, that's 4 minus 2, will be equal to 2, which is actually greater than k, right, k which is given as 1. So that will be greater than k. So here k is taken 1 or 0. K is 0 taken. Okay. So 2 is definitely greater than 0. So we need to remove that. Right. So I'll take the whole frequency of b, which is 2. Next up, what will happen, that uh, our comparison will be done with our c, and the frequency of c is 1, which is again less than our base frequency, that's 4. So this 1 shall also be added in our this minimum most frequency, which is actually counting. So it shall become 3. So when our base frequency is a, right, so the minimum possible characters that should be deleted becomes 3, right? So that's the minimum possible characters. Next up, when we will take our base as b, right, whose frequency is 2, right, so it will now again compare the frequency of a, which was 4, with your base frequency. So this is 2. So since it is greater, so we will say that in order to bring this in range, what would be the, what is the access frequency actually, right? So this is 4 minus 2 minus 0, right? This is your base frequency and this is your k. So 2 is the minimum possible one, which is actually exceeding the range, right? So in this case, your min-del becomes 2, and then it shall be compared with c, whose frequency is 1, and this is now less than 2, so it shall be removed completely. So this again becomes 3, right? And in the third case, when your c is your base, okay, so what will happen, it will be first compared with your a, okay, whose frequency is 4, and this is again greater than 1, right? So your min-del shall have that excessive difference, right? So it shall be 4 minus 1, that's 3. Okay, and then it will be compared with b, whose frequency is 2, which is again greater. So so how much more shall be added here? So it should be 3 minus 1 and minus 0, that would be 1. So it will be 4, right? So the minimum possible which we have to take will be minimum of this 3, this 3 and this 4, right? So it should be 3, 3 and 4, and that will return your 3. This is what simply we have to do. We need to first count the frequency of every character and store them, and then we just simply need to consider each and every frequency as the base frequency and consider others as comparing frequency, and that shall be done for all the frequencies greater than 0, right? And this will compute it. So let's try coding this. First we need to store the length of the string, and then for frequency we need to have an array. Okay, and then we will compute the frequency. Okay, so next up we need to have a variable mendel which shall compute the minimum possible characters, value of characters that should be deleted. So I'll simply initialize with the maximum possible value of the integer, right? And then we will traverse through our frequency array, and if it is equal to 0, then we just don't need to consider that. We'll proceed with our next iteration, and then for your ease, let me make it as base frequency, which will be frequency of I. Okay, and then I need to have my second iteration, right? So since I've made my first iteration to calculate my base frequency, next iteration would be to get those for your comparing frequency, right? So if here also if it is 0, then it's of no use for us, or if we encounter the same frequency, right, we had earlier, so we don't even need that, so we will just ignore this. And then we need to have a variable that will store the difference it should actually be over here because we need the whole value, right? And then here also I'll store it in a variable named compared frequency, which will have your frequency of j. Now we will simply put up the condition that if it is less than our base frequency, right? So what we'll do, that our del shall add this whole frequency because we don't need the lesser one, and else if the comparison frequency is too much greater than our base frequency plus k, let's write it. So you need to remove only the excess part of this frequency such that it comes in the range. Okay, and then we shall iterate it for all the other characters apart from the one which would be our base, and then by the end of this loop we need to update our minimum del, which will store the minimum possible value, right? And del, and this should just be returned after all the iterations. I'll run this. Okay, this is accepted. Let's try submitting it. And this is accepted. Okay, and as I do in my every video, here is the C++ code for the same. You may refer to it, right? The concept is same. So yeah, the question was definitely a good question. It involved a mathematical logic. You should definitely look to this question once again and try practicing it. Till then, we shall meet tomorrow with another question. Okay, bye bye.